welcome to our new episode of our podcast, Yale College Voices. Today I have Sam Cohen. I'm really excited to have you here. I'm Darice Corey, for those who don't know. So Sam, I'm going to introduce you and welcome and talk about your bio here, and then we'll just have a conversation.
Super excited to be here. Thanks, Darice.
Yeah, absolutely. So Sam and I, we've worked together for a while, sort of indirectly and on various projects. But so Sam is director of IT for the Yale Center for International and Professional Experience, which is now known as the Office of International and Summer Programs. So Sam is a dedicated educational technologist who finds true joy in building, designing, and constantly learning. With a career spanning from graphic design in the San Francisco Bay Area to your current role here at Yale, Sam's unique journey has shaped his approach to IT, infusing it with a creative and user-centric perspective. So Sam has built numerous web systems and websites for the CIPE and OISP. He's a lead designer and developer on the Yale College Safety Net project. And prior to his work in Yale College, Sam was part of a team that was charged with building digital learning systems for Yale faculty and departments. Sam's team built applications like a stock market simulator, a companion app for the Peabody Museum, and open Yale courses. So prior to his career in IT, Sam studied and worked as a graphic designer in the San Francisco Bay Area and Western Mass. Sam has designed banners for the San Francisco Symphony, magazines for UC Berkeley's Haas School of Business, and animated graphics for the Bradley International Airport. So Sam mentioned that this is an unusual start for a career in IT, but he wouldn't have it any other way. His foundation in design informs his work daily as he designs user interfaces and shapes user experiences for Yale students, staff, and faculty. So Sam and his family and their 14-year-old golden retriever mix live in a cozy house surrounded by a forest in Woodbridge, Connecticut. I remember the picture of the bear in the yard.
Oh yeah.
Right next to New Haven, yeah. And there's one thing that we didn't mention. So Sam and I have known each other for quite some time over the years here at Yale College. So Sam contributed to the Yale College website redesign. The award-winning, yes, I was about to mention that. The Yale College website redesign project, along with my colleagues that I definitely want to mention, Blaise Marcoya, who's Associate Director of Web and IT Planning, and Sheila Galuli-Green, who is our content editor. And by the way, the website won a Webby Award in 2020 for the People's Voice Award for school and university websites. So welcome, Sam. So glad you decided to join me today.
I feel like after that bio, we don't really even have to do the interview. That's pretty much everything. My work here is done.
But really interesting because, I kind of have an unusual background too when I coming into IT. I always knew that I wanted to work in some way with technology. So how did it work out for you? Like, did you start out as a kid?
Good question. I mean, so honestly, I did not know that I was going to have a career in IT. I mean, I always loved technology in the sense that, like, I loved taking stuff apart and putting it back together, and sometimes putting it back together in incomplete or incorrect ways, but just the process of like disassembly with an intention of learning, and then reassembly or reconfiguring or making something better or tweaking. That was always a part of, and that continues to be a part of who I am. So. In that sense, when I think about that and I look back, of course, like a career in IT makes sense. But like when I started, at least my educational path to get to where I am right now is very zigzag and very different than I would have ever expected. I mean, if I thought back when I started, would I have planned it that way? No way. But looking back now, I don't think I would have done anything differently because it made me who I am.
Right.
And I really enjoy who I am right now. And I really enjoy where my educational career path has led me. I started. So let's see where to start this story. So I guess, when I left high school, I didn't know who the heck I was and what the heck I wanted to do. And I sort of arbitrarily chose engineering because of what I mentioned to you about, like enjoying the building process and the creation process. And that is what engineering is. But those early years in college as an engineering student are not what that is. I was taking calculus and like chemistry, and this was at UMass Amherst, and great school. Nothing bad to say about UMass Amherst. It works for a lot of students. It did not work for me. It was like designed to be the exact wrong place for Sam Cohen. Like I can remember my first class in UMass was a chemistry lecture. And this is literally like day one. And I sat down in this auditorium full of like 300 other students. And like, I remember so distinctly that feeling that I got in my gut where it was like, I have made a really bad decision. This is absolutely not going to work for me. And ultimately it didn't. And honestly, this is a little bit of a sidebar thing, but like as a graduating senior in high school, I didn't know that there was even an option to like not go to college. All my friends were going to college. Everybody seemed excited about it. I would have really benefited from taking a year off working or traveling or doing something else. That's a bit of a digression. But at the end of those 2 semesters at UMass, I talked to my parents and I was like, this is just not working. And they knew that it just wasn't working. And they're both great people, and they recognize that like this is not right for their son. And so at that point, I went to community college. I went to Holyoke Community College in Holyoke, Massachusetts. And honestly, like I know here we are in Yale in an Ivy League institution, but like that community college experience was so perfect for me at the time. And I'm sure it's perfect for a lot of other kids too. It was just what I needed. And it was really like, when I look back at like all of the education that I've had since, that was such a transformative and important part in my like educational like awakening, really. I was studying this thing called electronic media at the time, which was using these computers called Macintoshes. Like I was like, what even are these things?
Know, right?
This doesn't look like Windows 3.1.
The big square ones?
No,
right?
I mean, this is going to reveal how old I am to everyone, but this was like Mac OS 8.1. Got it. And it was, they were still like beige boxes.
Oh, okay, got it.
But like I was building like graphics using these computers and animations using these computers. And I had an instructor / mentor at the time. His name was Justin West, and he was this big, tall, gray-haired guy. And like, he was such an impactful figure on my educational upbringing, because he was one of those instructors that like genuinely wanted you to succeed, and was there to do everything that he possibly could to help you succeed. Where at UMass, and again, nothing bad to say about UMass. This is just my personal experience. UMass was the exact opposite of that. It was just like, what can we do to make you fail? So going to school and learning with this guy was just amazing. And like I really understood that, like, wait a minute, I actually do like learning, and I do. There is a future path for me, and it's definitely not engineering, and it is this thing in front of me, this box in front of me that I can use as a creative tool to build, amazing graphics and, do these little animations. And like, I just fell in love with the computer, not the computer itself, but like what I could do with the computer, what it enabled. And it was, like I said, it was just such like a transformative moment in my life. And then, I graduated there with an associate's degree, and somehow I managed to get a graphic design job.
Oh, nice.
And this was also important too. This was at a place that made these giant industrial heating and air conditioning units. So essentially they were like these totally different, giant like gray boxes that sit on top of buildings. And my job as the graphic designer for this company was to somehow make these giant gray boxes exciting. Which is like, how do you do that? It's like the most boring subject in the world. But as a graphic designer, you gotta make those advertisements and those catalogs, and you gotta make people want to buy these giant gray boxes. So I learned a lot about that. But I think what was impactful about that role was the fact that it was this was probably like 1998 or something. Don't judge me. I'm so old. But it was like that moment where like everybody was having websites, and the internet was like being like built, and was this new exciting thing that was happening all around me. And that company was like, hey, Sam, you know this thing called Photoshop, right? And you've probably heard of the internet. Do you think you could maybe make a website?
Yes.
So I was like, I'll give it a shot.
Right.
And, I made this horrible website, and, I made it in Photoshop, and then I cut it up and I brought it into Dreamweaver. And then I used this application called Fetch, which was an FTP application. And I put it on the web. And then like the moment when I typed in the URL, and I saw my horrible website in a web browser it was magical. I mean, it felt like magic to me. And the idea that like anyone in the world, whether they were, across the globe in like Japan or something, could type in that URL on an internet-enabled computer and see that design, that was really magical.
It is.
It was. So, I mean, that kind of, and so, I was still very much in the design realm at that point, but like I was like, well, how can I make these static buttons do something? So then I had to learn a little bit of JavaScript, and then it was like, well, I'd like a web form, so then I need to learn some PHP, and then it's like, well, the people are submitting things via this web form. Where are they going to go? They're going to have to go in a database. So like one thing led to another, and then all of a sudden I had this informal sort of like web stack knowledge. And then from there, I'll skip over a lot of this because I'm going long-winded.
That's okay.
But I went to California. I lived in the Bay Area. That was a super exciting time. So like San Francisco Bay Area. So that was a super exciting time to be like involved in the internet and like graphic design at the time, because that was like the height of the .com boom. And stuff was happening so fast. And I got another graphic design job there. And I was building like, print. I was still doing a lot of print work, but I was also building these like web graphics and things like that.
Oh, nice.
And then I came back to Massachusetts. This is the point in the story where your listeners are like, why would you come back to Massachusetts? Sounds like things are... I came back for a girl, Darice. And that girl dumped me and then moved to Australia.
I thought you were going to say it
shortly after coming back. No, but that's okay, because, again, I couldn't have planned it that way, but it led to me being here. So I found myself back in Massachusetts, and I contacted my old job, the big gray boxes job, and they hired me back into my old role, which was great. Wow. And so while I was there, this was in Westfield, Massachusetts. I took classes at Westfield State College at the time. It's now Westfield State University, and got my bachelor's degree, very traditional degree in graphic design. So that was sort of like formalized, which was cool. And then when I graduated there, they asked me to teach. They asked me to become adjunct faculty there. And like, that was sort of the moment where I realized that like, I knew I loved being a part of academia, from both like the learning side, but also the instructional side. And it was, like that same moment that you have as a student or anywhere in life really, where like you figure something out. And you just feel so like empowered by what you've just like figured out and discovered. It's so much fun to be an instructor and give that experience to a student. Help them get to that moment where like they're working. I was teaching graphic design. They're working on a design, and like it's just not coming together. And you're like, okay, well, like, is this balanced? Like, what can we do with colors here? And just sort of like nudge them in the right, coach them. Nudge them in the right direction to get to the point where they have that aha moment. And it's like, wow, it just came together. It's just really magical.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. So let me abridge the rest of this. So from there, I came to Connecticut to get my master's at Quinnipiac.
Mm.
Why and program interactive communications. Very good, very fun. Learned a lot there. They also asked me to teach after I had
Oh, that's
graduated, which was
great.
super cool. So
Yeah.
I was still a part of the learning process in that way.
Mhm.
And then I got a job at Fairfield University. You're a
Ah,
Fairfield alum, I
yes,
know that.
yes, go Stags.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I was a programmer there, so
Mhm.
like that was a big departure from a lot of what I
Yeah.
was doing. I was still, even though I had this like, love of technology and I had this
Mhm.
understanding of the typical like, open source web stack at the
Mhm.
time,
Mhm.
um, I it wasn't really formal, but
Mhm.
they for some reason, decided to hire me as a programmer. And I was
Wow,
like a web programmer and I was building these
nice.
websites and these web applications and,
Mhm.
like these calendaring systems and
Wow.
these other things. And like I really like figured out that like this is kind of who I am. This
Mm.
marriage of like being entrenched in technology, but
Mhm.
also like loving the design aspect of it
Yeah, yeah.
because like you can build the best system in the world, but if it has a crappy user interface on top of
Yes.
it, it's dead before it
Right,
even launches, right?
right.
So like marrying those two things together was such a smart way for my career to go, and
Mhm.
that's kind of what I was able to do at
Mhm.
Fairfield.
Mhm.
Then I came here to this fine
Mhm.
university where we are right now.
Mhm.
Um, Working as an instructional technologist, and
Ah, okay.
this was for the Center for Media and Instructional Innovation. That's when
Mhm.
from the bio. That's when we did open Yale courses and we
Yeah,
had stock
yeah.
market simulator. And
Interesting.
I was working with David Hirsch
Mhm.
at the time.
Mhm.
He was my instructor, and he recognized that like you're here to do instructional technology,
Mhm.
but you have this like varied background. You have this design background. You have this programming background.
Right.
So he let me really like shape that position to be whatever I wanted
What
it
do
to
you
be, which
wanted?
was
Yeah.
like bringing all of those things together.
Mhm.
And yeah, and then here I am at the CIPE, no longer the
Mhm.
CIPE, the OISP,
Mhm.
as the director of IT, where I'm still able to
Mhm.
bring all of those pieces together, even
Mhm.
though the position is called a director, and lots of folks would assume that the director of IT directs IT, which
Mhm.
is what I'm doing, but I'm also super hands-on because
Yeah,
that's why I
yeah.
love, I love
Right.
the process of like building and creating. And so
Yeah.
those are still the things that I try to bring into my work, even though there are budgets
Yeah,
now
yeah.
and, management tasks and those
Right.
kinds of things. I still need to get my hands dirty and
Yeah.
like actively participate in the building process.
Oh, that's so awesome. I love that story because there's so many things you mentioned that are very similar to my background and how I came into IT, which I won't go into that story. We talked about maybe you interviewing
I
me
can't
someday,
wait. That'll be so fun.
but yeah, and I'll share all of that then. But because it's me too. It was
Uh-huh.
kind of like, oh wow, I took all of these interesting twists and
Yeah.
turns,
And it's
and
like you
then it,
never would have expected it
yeah,
to unfold that way, but
right,
that's the way it did, and that made you the person that you are. It made me
yeah,
the person I
yeah.
am, and like it just worked out.
And it's what I find amazing about that is, um, even though it was like the unconventional approach
Mhm,
to
mhm.
where you are now, all of those experiences contribute to how well you do your job now
Yeah.
because your approach one thing I've always liked about you is
Oh,
like Sam is like um totally user focused, like
aw,
all
thanks,
the
thanks, Grace.
time, like consistently, even, the back end, you know what I mean? Like, you know how to build stuff, the back end, but all of those experiences, um, I think shaped and molded how you approach the user experience or literally you're thinking, how people feel or interact with whatever it is that you're building.
Yeah, that's
And
very kind of you to say. If
yeah.
if the podcaster listeners should know that I'm blushing right now, that's very kind of you. I mean, that's why it was so wonderful to work with you and your team on the Yale College project, because you guys appreciate that aspect of the build process too, and recognize that like that's just as important as like the Drupal framework that we're building upon.
Exactly.
So I think that was a good team up, and I think that's why it worked so well.
Yeah, it really was. And I always tell folks, we won the People's Voice Award because I feel like, it was built for the people, and that was our goal.
There was a trophy that went along with that too.
There was a trophy,
very beautiful
right?
Trophy.
And
no cash prize though.
Yeah, no cash prize. Yeah, only the the ability to say, hey, we won it. But yeah, I mean, it's fascinating to hear how your initial experience started out as you enjoyed breaking things. It sounds like you enjoyed breaking things and putting it back together.
Breaking a lot of things, yes.
That's actually, when I said I had a similar experience, I'm the same way. Like when I was younger, I just liked to know how things worked.
Yeah,
and
totally.
for some strange reason, that was fun to me.
Yeah,
like I liked
because it's
taking
about
the pieces apart.
Yeah, it's like every time you peel back a layer to figure out what's going on underneath, you learn about that process, right? You learn. So I mean, like you look at like anything, like a bicycle, right? It's like I twist this thing on the handlebar and it pulls this wire right here that then pulls this thing and moves this over here. And it's so cool to watch it happen.
Yes,
and it's like, it's also very cool to get on that bicycle and ride across town, but like understanding like the components that work together to make this thing operate in such a seamless way is so cool. And you can't really, that is not something that you can get instinctually. You have to peel back those layers and you have to like take it one layer at a time. You peel back this layer and you see that like, oh, okay, this, when I pull this, it pulls that wire. And then you peel back the next layer and you're like, okay, but when that wire gets pulled, it, moves the derailleur over here and moves the chain onto this thing. And then when you realize like the physics of that. Well, when like, when the chain is on this smaller sprocket, it affects the system this way. And like you need to peel back those layers in order to understand how something works. And I think there's an inherent fear sometimes in peeling back those layers, especially because like, I'll peel back these layers, and especially if you're working on something physical, I'll peel back these layers and then I won't be able to get it back together. But I think in order to do the work that we do, and in order to love the kind of work that we do, I think you have to get over your fear of peeling back those layers, because there's so much to discover underneath those layers, and it makes you so much more informed in the work that you're doing when you understand those like low level concepts that are going together to produce the thing that you're producing. But again, like ultimately, like it's not about, for the end user anyway, it's not about how the bicycle works. It's about the fact that they can use this tool to get across town, right? And so I think there's a balancing act there. Like it's critical as somebody who's building the bicycle to understand how the bicycle works and how to optimize the bicycle. But at the end of the day, the fact that the end user doesn't necessarily have to think about how the bicycle works to get it from, point A to point B, it is a success. If you give them the bicycle and they never think about all of those layers that we just talked about, but they can get from point A to point B, it's a success.
Right, that they can use that tool. And that, that's what we're here for with what we do, right? We hopefully make all of the tools easy, for our users so that they can do what they need to do.
And I mean, and I think that's what's so liberating about working on the web is that, you can make a change that will instantaneously and immediately affect the end product, right? So, back when I was working in print, right? Once the ink gets on the page, you're done, right? So if you have introduced a typo or even an advertisement that's not as like optimized as you'd like it to be, once it's, once that ink is on the paper and that catalog is in the mail, it's done. That's like fixed in, permanently. But working on the the web is wonderful. You know, you can go and you can fix typos all day long.
Right,
and there are
right.
plenty of typos out there to fix.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, you can always fix it, right?
yeah,
You can
you can fix it and hit publish, and there it is, ready for the world.
Immediately. That's what I think I enjoyed most about my accidental I had a similar experience where it was like, hey, you do IT, so can you just do the site? And it's like, sure, I can, yeah.
But that's it right there. Like the willingness to like learn something that you don't already have a mastery of. I think what defines a good technologist.
Yes.
You know?
Yes.
Because technology changes all the time, and quickly.
Yep.
And if you don't have, that's one of those things that like you can't really learn. It just has to be a part of your personality.
Right.
I think personally.
Like your DNA almost.
Yeah, to be a good technologist is just the willingness to constantly learn new things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's, for me, that was the most exciting part, was that it always changed. You know, it's always changing. There's always something new to learn.
Monday is never the same as Tuesday.
Yeah, I mean, there's stuff I always said I wish I had enough time in the day, or, you know, like the Matrix, and just plug in and download and have all that knowledge, because there's so much.
Except
impossible.
The process of learning, I think, is just as important of ultimately having the knowledge.
Absolutely.
Right.
I want to go back to what you mentioned with your experience, your early experience going to college, and I had a similar experience as well, where, you know, the teaching format, maybe, or the approach just didn't work for me early on.
Yeah.
You know, the whole, and I don't know what was your experience. For me, it was a lot of lectures.
Yeah. I mean,
and I need the hands-on.
Yes, that's exactly it. I mean, you know, recognizing that everybody learns differently, I think, is an important thing. And recognizing the way that you learn best, you personally learn best, I think is important. And I know personally, when I was going into college for that first, you know, the first time at UMass, I didn't know that about myself. I mean, you know, I was 18 years old. I didn't know anything about myself. But, you know, I know, and it sounds like you're the same, like I know that like for me to learn, I need to be doing. I need my hands on a thing to learn as effectively as possible. You know, I am not one that learns from a book. A lot of people do learn from books. That's why we're surrounded by books right now.
Right.
And you know, I respect books. I've typeset, you know, dozens of books, but I am not the kind of person that can get knowledge in that way from a book. If I really want it to be a part of who I am and a part of my skill set, I need to be doing, I need to be building, I need to be like physically interacting. And physically interacting can mean typing on a keyboard, you know, which is what I do mostly these days. But it can also be taking apart a bicycle.
Yeah. No, and that's so true. And so I'm curious, what would you, you know, if you had to advise a student who maybe coming into Yale and they're starting to feel like, what am I doing here? What kind of advice would you give in terms of,
great question.
You know, their approach? Because I think it's important to realize that some formats of teaching just do not or may not work for everyone, right? And I don't even know how I would approach it as a Yale student.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think it's what we just discussed a moment ago. You know, like take some time and really figure out like what your learning style is, and you know, and a lot of what your learning style is, I think, is a reflection of who you are and what's important to you, right? And I think the earlier, this is me talking to my former self. You know, if I could sit down with Sam of 18 years old, this is what I would say. I would tell him like take some time and just really figure out like who you are as a professional and who you are as a person, and like, you know, just recognize that and work with that. That's not to say, especially, you know, as you're embarking on an educational journey. That's not to say that you are never going to have to sit down with a book, a textbook, and read a textbook. You're going to have to, but the sooner that but you're going to hate it.
Yeah.
So the sooner that you can balance that with some of the things that you like, you will have a much more fulfilling and satisfying educational experience. I would also say, to sort of make this a little bit more selfish, I guess this whole thing is selfish. It's all about me.
It's all about you.
But, you know, if I were to sit down with somebody, a student, a young person that was ultimately trying to have a career in either graphic design or in IT, I would tell them that yes, school is important and learn as much as you can, but also start building your portfolio. And I don't mean like your official portfolio that you submit in a job interview or anything, but I mean like build things and build little like utilities, program little utilities and put them on GitHub and like contribute to the community and make designs for your friend's band and just like have stuff that you can point to and you can say, I built this, so that when it comes time, when you leave college and you're looking for a job, you will have something to show for your time. And it's not going to be polished. My stuff when I was like a young graphic designer, an early graphic designer, was not polished. I look back at it right now and it's so embarrassing.
I know.
But it helped get me that first job, and that first job got me that second job. And you build your portfolio. If you leave school and all you have to show for it is your grades, that's great. That's one thing. But for the kind of work that I do, and if I were looking to hire somebody to do that work, I would want to see examples. And again, like they don't have to be polished, but like I would just want to see that. So that is what I would tell a young version of myself who's just sort of starting out. Yeah.
That's awesome. And I think that you made another great point just in terms of you may have your courses and whatever coursework you have, but I think it's also important in the learning process to just try to build stuff that's how I learned.
Totally.
A lot of what I learned was I don't want to say completely self-taught, but it was early iterations of YouTube and literally just downloading whatever it was and play around with it, break it, and
don't be afraid to break things.
Yeah. I used an old computer, set up a server and have at it and
I mean, especially at that point in your, professional career or educational career, like the stakes are so low, right?
Yeah.
You can stand up a server and break it and like, you're not going to like hose your university's website,
Exactly.
So like that's the time to experiment.
Right.
So yeah.
Yeah, highly recommend that. So that's a great point. So I'm curious, you have experience teaching and what I really like about you is just your energy level.
That's
on the
coffee.
Topic. Yeah, that's a coffee. But yeah, I mean, I've always observed that you have this passion. You have this passion for
Thanks, Darice.
Showing people how to do something or use this tool or the benefits of the tool and that kind of thing. And so I'm curious how that. And I already know, but I'd love for you to tell us or tell our listeners how you pull all of those experiences, teaching and your past work experience into how you approach showing staff, like all of these things that you built. Like, for example, you mentioned early on that like the safety net project, and that was huge, right?
It's one of the things that I'm really proud of.
Yeah, it's an amazing accomplishment. So first tell us a little bit more about safety net, and then tell us a little bit more about just how you approach showing folks how to use it.
And I mean, credit where credit's due. Safety net was not all me. I mean, the team. So I was the programmer for Safety net. So I like built the thing that people use when they use Safety net. But the idea for Safety net was a collaborative effort. Beloved Jane Edwards was who just recently retired. Was a big influencer in Safety net. Rebecca Westfall, who was the former director of fellowships, who just left this position. Kelly McLaughlin, study abroad. Bergie Howard of student engagement. So lots of people really contribute. So just to be clear, I don't want to take full credit for that. It was a collaborative. But the thing that people use when they use safety net was all me. So what is safety net? So safety net is a system that allows for students that are Yale College students that are experiencing an unexpected financial hardship to request money. So what would that be? So it could be anything as sort of minimal, like I'm a student from Florida and I've never experienced a Connecticut winter before. And wow, it's cold here in the winter. And I only brought a hooded sweatshirt. And, so I need some money to get a winter coat. And so that's it. Or on the other side of the spectrum, it's, I'm a student. I'm here in Connecticut right now, but I live in California and my grandmother passed away and I need to get to California fast from Connecticut so that I can go to her funeral. And I don't have money to do that. And so the student can put in a request and it goes through some processes and then that request gets funded. Lots of requests get rejected too. But those legitimate requests get funded and the student gets the money and they can do their thing. What was impactful and important about safety net is that prior to its existence, students would get this money, but only if they knew who to ask. So, a student that was savvy and outgoing and had a good relationship with their, residential college dean or whatever, an academic advisor or whatever, would know to ask these things and ultimately get money. But a student that was less savvy or shy or just didn't have those connections yet, but had a legitimate need, the same legitimate need as the other student, would not know who to ask and ultimately not get their thing funded. And one of the things that safety net did that I think was so important was that it leveled the playing field, right? It made it so that students could submit these requests in one central location. And administrators from, all across campus, residential college deans and, all in the financial aid office and, like the athletics person that's involved can all go in, look at the request that's relevant to them, to the, to a student that's, within their residential college or whatever, and, weigh in on that request and put all of the information in alongside the request so that there weren't these like side channels where like administrator A is picking up the phone and calling administrator B and they're making some decision that administrator C doesn't know anything about. So now all of the information that relates to that request is built into the system. So administrator D can now go into the system, look at that request and get a full like life cycle snapshot of like what that request was from the moment the student submitted it, all of the documentation that they submitted, all of the dialogue between all of the administrators, and also the student has the ability to continue to work with administrators on that request, and it all gets captured in the system. So and it does a million other things like reporting and all kinds of other stuff like that. So when we talk about DEIB stuff, this is firmly in the camp of inclusion, I think, because of that like leveling of the playing field effect, where like all students, regardless of what their personality is or, where they are on campus or what they do on campus, all students have access to this system. And all of these requests are treated entirely fairly and exactly the same across the board. And I'm really proud of that. I'm proud that, we gave this tool to the administrators to make it easier for them. And of course, for the students that they now have the ability to get these financial requests financed so that they can go and do these things that they need to do. And especially at a time where things are not great. The reason they're submitting a request is because something is not great right now. And we have a lot of money at Yale. So they should be able, and they are a part of the Yale community. So we should have safety net for staff. But anyway, it is our responsibility as staff to keep our students safe and make sure that all of that stuff, all of the stuff that safety net would go and fund it's taken care of so that that can get out of the way so that they can focus on what they're here to do, which is learn and, be amazing young adults. So I'm really proud of that project. And I was really excited to be a part of that team. And it was such a rewarding thing to build. And it has grown too. It's expanded so much. I mean, it's been around for around like 5 years now, I think. And from the moment that we launched it, we understood its impact, but I don't think we understood the extent of its impact. And because of the extent of its impact, we've been able to grow it and add more features and add more utility to it. So it is definitely like a living, breathing thing just because it's launched right now. It's in no way is it like, the stamp goes on and it's done and you walk away.
It's constantly evolving. And that's really exciting because, like you said, it levels the playing field for students.
Definitely.
One of the common themes that has come up in our past episodes is our younger versions having access to information or access to mentors, or just even knowing who to ask and for what, or where to go
exactly.
for
That's
help.
what it is.
And having that available makes such a huge difference in your time here.
Yeah. And I mean, there's a lot of support structures in place for students. They have their FROCO advisors and their academic advisors and their Yale College advisors. And Safety Net is just a tool that is available for all. So the way that I imagine Safety Net being used often is a student is talking to one of their advisors and is saying like, this thing is happening and I'm distraught. And then that advisor knows to say, well, like there's a solution to your problem. It's Safety Net. Go put your request in and, it'll be okay.
Yeah. And that's really comforting because I can only imagine, especially for students who, like you said, maybe aren't from Connecticut and they've moved away from home and they're here and maybe feel
and that's daunting.
Daunting, isolated. And I can't imagine because I was a commuter, when I went to college because I ended up staying home in the comfort of home. Right? But
nothing wrong with that.
But the reason I chose that was, and this is a long story. I was going to go away to school in Atlanta. Okay. I was actually interested in Spelman, and because my brother lived in Atlanta. Okay, and that same year or so, he decided to move back to Connecticut, and I was scared to leave Connecticut without having like some sort of connection out there. And I ended up changing my mind and I applied locally. But I can't imagine going to a whole different place and not having access to resources and knowing who to ask for help,
And that's why it's called Safety Net.
Because
it provides that. At least the of all of the things that, a student worries about, a financial hardship is not something that they need to worry about. So it provides that safety net for that aspect of the total of their anxieties. Hopefully that one can be easily resolved.
You remove the obstacle, right?
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love that story. And I'm curious if you could tell us about, I know that, again, with my experience with you throughout the years, you just have, you show passion in your work a lot, and I've experienced others where it's like, they do, if they built something and they do a demo, you could tell when someone's really passionate about their work. And
I'm lucky because I'm doing work that I love,
that you enjoy,
and
right?
like I recognize that like not everyone is that lucky, but I'm also lucky. And I think it's only recently in my sort of adulthood that I recognize this, but I've been really lucky because the people that I've reported to, I've already named a couple of them, David Hirsch at the CMI2, and absolutely Jane Edwards, without a doubt, allowed me to build the position and, configure the position in the way that it needed to be configured for my own personal happiness, right? Yeah. But at the same time, also structured in a way where I'm satisfying the requirements of the job, and also hopefully bringing more than what was expected to the job, because I'm able to craft it in such a way. I'm able to bring all of the pieces from my educational and professional experience together to build out this position and, give to my colleagues everything that I've learned from all of those experiences.
Yeah, that's so awesome.
But I do, I think it's important to recognize that I'm really lucky. Like if I had a different job, if I worked at Home Depot, I couldn't bring in my, graphic design creativity. There would be no opportunity to do that. So I absolutely recognize that is a privilege.
It is a privilege. But I think it is important, whether you worked in higher ed or you worked in a corporate environment, giving your staff or giving employees that wiggle room to use that creativity, and to feel, I think it really builds your passion for your work, and it leads to a happier employee. Yeah, I honestly feel that way, because if it's so strict and structured and you're only expected to deliver X, Y, Z, after a while, I think it leads to being burned out a little bit.
Exactly. That's exactly what I was going to say. Yeah. I mean, one of the things that I learned from Jane Edwards, actually, is that one of the roles of a good manager is to remove obstacles for the people that report to you, so that you can put them in a space where they can thrive, right? Yes. And Jane constantly did that. I would come to her with sometimes I was just venting to her, not even expecting her to solve a problem for me, but I would come to her with a problem, and she'd take some notes, and she was like, I will handle this for you. Wow. And that problem, which was like a roadblock of some sort, would just disappear. And that enabled me to do my best work, because I didn't have any roadblocks in front of me. And I think that is the mark of a good supervisor.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's amazing. I love that, because it does. It's like if you have those obstacles removed, and literally it feels like, okay, I can spread my wings a little bit. Yeah. And it adds to
live
your
up
growth.
To your own potential.
Live up to your own potential, and also, be able to grow and feel like you have room to be more creative. You come up with creative solutions. That's amazing. I love that. So I'm curious, talking about creativity, you mentioned that you live in Woodbridge, and you're surrounded by a forest,
Yeah, there are bears.
Yeah, there are bears. But I'm wondering, so let's say, like, during the pandemic, when we're all working remotely, I envision that as actually feeling sort of peaceful, right? But did it feel, well, tell me how it felt. Like, was it peaceful but also like isolating, or how did that affect your creativity and your?
That's a really good question. I am the kind of person where I actually thrive on isolation sometimes. Oh, wow. Yeah. Sometimes I need to just be like fully entrenched in the thing that I'm working on or the thing that I'm learning. Like I'm honestly not a very good multitasker. I mean, I can listen to a podcast while I wash the dishes, but that's like the extent of my multitasking. So like sometimes, if I want to be really productive, I need isolation. I need silence, and I need isolation. And honestly, like the pandemic, while it was nasty for lots of reasons, lots of obvious reasons, it was okay for me. It was okay. And honestly, like what came out of the pandemic is what we're all experiencing, at least in Yale College right now, is the ability to have this hybrid work model, which honestly I think it's the best of both worlds, because I get those days in my week where I can be completely isolated and focus on a task for several uninterrupted hours. But then I also have the days in the week where I'm in my office and I'm available to my colleagues, and my colleagues are available to me. And we have those interactions, those like water cooler style interactions, which like sounds like goofy to say,
Right.
but like, I think those are really important because not only do you, talk about work stuff, but you really get to know your
Yes.
colleagues and your coworkers as people. And
Right.
through those connections comes so much more. I mean, just
Agreed.
like really, even just, appreciation of who this person is, and also understanding who they are helps you work with them and collaborate
Absolutely.
with them on a work level. And so
Right.
this hybrid work style that we have right now is so perfect. It's so perfect for me. Like, honestly, like, I wouldn't want to work fully remote. I love coming into the office and, being in the same physical space as, the people that I've worked with for a decade now. And I really appreciate that. And I really find value in that actual interaction.
Yeah.
And then on the flip side, having those 2 days a week that are, a time where I can just kind of like buckle down and work on something that requires a lot of brain power and
Right.
for me requires isolation is great. And, that came from the pandemic, and again, like, it's worth recognizing, like, a lot of nasty stuff came
Yeah.
from the pandemic. I
Right.
mean, like, people died, and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
awful.
Right.
And a lot of, and I mean, yeah, I mean, I don't really,
Right.
that's not what we're here to talk about right now.
Right.
But, one of the
Right.
things that came out of this pandemic was reevaluating what it means to be at work and contribute to work.
Right.
And it has worked really well for me. And I hope we can continue that model in Yale College.
Yeah, absolutely. Same here. I on the flip side, I actually missed being in the office, and some of the various, office activities that we used to have. I was just talking to a colleague and remember when we had we had a Christmas party, but it was more like a gift exchange, and we'd had lunch and and it was funny, and I have one of the gifts that traveled through everyone under my desk still. I'm like, maybe they'll bring it back. Because I feel like, I mean, and don't get me wrong, the evening party is very nice. I love that too. But I felt like that was fun. That was actually fun.
Sure,
It was nice
of
to
course,
see everybody. So
because we work with such great people.
yes,
There are
yes,
so many amazing people in Yale College. I mean, it is really miraculous. I mean,
is.
how this combination of personalities comes together to produce so much amazing stuff. And I think it's worth taking a step back and just sort of like looking at it from like a high level and just being like, wow, this is an incredible group of people. It really is.
Like amazing backgrounds, even just doing this podcast.
So
I've
motivated
learned,
and so talented. I mean, like, that's one of the other reasons why I think it's so important to have that, like, in the same space interaction with people, because their talents and their motivations are so much more apparent in that kind of a space. And I think, speaking personally, I really am impacted by other people's motivation. If somebody's really passionate about something, I will continue their passion, and or their passion helps me be more passionate about the thing, And so I like I said, it's a great combination of workspaces that we have right now, and I really hope it continues.
Yeah, same here. I agree. And like I said, even just doing this podcast, I've learned so much about different people that we've been in the same building for over a decade.
I know.
And it's like,
crazy,
how
right?
did I not have a conversation with you? And, and even now, and I hope that people are sort of motivated by the podcast just to, if they see you out and about, like, oh, I know Sam, and maybe I'll have coffee with Sam just to talk to him about something. Or
first coffee's on me.
Yeah. And maybe they have an idea about something and they'll run it by you. But just hearing you and hearing your passion for your work and your background, I think, would change their their willingness to kind of just stop and interact with you. And Yeah, I
would
agree.
welcome that. Yeah.
It's amazing because we do work with quite an amazing group of people and different backgrounds and experiences. I mean,
They're so talented. They're so smart.
yeah,
Everybody's
I
so
mean,
smart.
we've got poets, we've got filmmakers,
I
we've got,
know. I know.
arts, folks with arts backgrounds and IT folks who, woohoo, we help with all the behind the scenes stuff and yeah, I mean, it's pretty amazing when you watch it all come together. Um, I think that's what's for me, that's, I guess, some of the job satisfaction, right?
Yeah.
Like
Oh,
it's,
without a doubt. Yep. Yep.
seeing all of this come together and then realizing what you've contributed to.
Yeah. Knowing that you are a piece of that success. Yeah.
Right, right. It's amazing.
Yeah. Totally.
So, and I have a couple more questions, and then we'll wrap up today.
Sure.
But I'm curious in terms of your experience with whether it's graphics design or just your building applications and things like that. What were Safety Net was a great example in terms of inclusion, but did you have any other examples of projects that you felt sort of resonated for folks in terms of whether it was inclusion or diversity or
So a few years ago, the CIPE did a big push to get all of our web content accessible.
Yes, yes.
And I think it's like the WCAG 2.2 is what Yale strives to have all of their web properties compatible with, and those are accessibility guidelines for web systems. And it was one of those moments where like I knew nothing about web accessibility, and it's embarrassing to say that out loud.
Yeah.
That like as like a web technology expert, quote unquote. I knew very little about web accessibility. And it was one of those moments where like it required me to peel back the layers and really understand this audience that we're ultimately building content for, and how we can make our content in the CIPE optimized and more and better and more accessible to all kinds of people.
Right.
And I know you've worked with Michael Harris. I don't think he's here at Yale anymore, but he was such an amazing resource. He taught me so much about what it means to make websites accessible. I mean, everything from like, making sure that like your HTML tags are, hierarchically, semantically correct, to like color contrast. You can't put this type of text on this type of background because a differently sighted person will experience that differently than someone else, to even like the way that you like write the words on the page, don't hyperlink the words, click here. Instead, hyperlink the words, click here to apply to study abroad, and apply to study abroad is the hyperlink instead of like, click here. Optimizing for screen readers. And like, it was one of those things where it's like, we need to do a full U-turn here, because we need to learn everything that we can do, everything that we can, and then we need to implement this into our sites. And we need to do this now, because this is critically important. And, I learned so much from that, and it has become such a part of every single web experience that we build now, to the point where like, previously it was like, okay, let's build a thing and then let's tack on some accessibility afterwards. But now it's like accessibility is a part of the thing that we build from the start. And ultimately that makes a better product. And one of the things, and I learned this from Michael Harris, one of the things that was so important to recognize about accessibility is that accessibility is for everyone, right? Like, I have, perfectly decent hearing for a 45-year-old person.
Right.
But like I watch stuff on YouTube with the captions on all the time.
Me too.
All the time.
Isn't
Because
it interesting?
it helps my comprehension of what's going on.
Me
Or
too.
I'm in a space where like I can't have the volume on or something, but I want to watch the thing.
Yep.
So those captions are not there necessarily for me, but I'm using them and they're helping me in my day to day.
Right.
And accessibility is so important, and I'm so proud of the university, really. And Michael Harris, and who's Michael Harris? Who did Michael Harris work for?
Michael Vaughn.
Yeah, Mike Vaughn. Yeah. I've learned so much from that team, and I'm so grateful that Yale has that team embedded here in the university for us to use as a resource. And they do fantastic work. And as we've discussed, I'm the kind of person that I'm the kind of IT person that I want to know how to do this, and I want to do the work to make it better.
Right.
And both of the mics gave me the knowledge to do that and helped me along my way. Yeah. But that team is also there if you are not a technical person and you're not the person that's going to hierarchically arrange, heading tags on a web page. Yeah. They'll do that work for you. And I'm like I said, I'm just so proud of the university that we have those resources available to anyone that's building anything on the web.
Yeah, they are excellent, excellent team.
Totally.
I'm in the middle of a project, and they're literally looking at it's a desktop application, and they're reviewing that application for us to help identify what needs to be addressed.
Here's an interesting one. So we built this check-in kiosk system on the third floor.
Yep.
And it's really cool. And because those are components that are on a screen, those things, like the buttons that people are pressing when they're checking in for their, study abroad advising appointment, that we had to consider accessibility there. We did all that. But here's the thing that we didn't consider is that literally the height of those kiosks and the table that those kiosks are physically situated on there's accessibility concerns there.
Right.
You need to make sure you need to make sure that someone that is using a wheelchair can reach those, and you need to make sure that the wheelchair fits with the furniture that's there and everything like that. And so it is one of those fields of understanding that is vast. It's vast, and there's so much to it because everyone's disability is different. No two disabilities are exactly the same.
Yes.
So you're constantly learning more about what you can do to make that experience better for everyone. And it's just such a fascinating, it's such a fascinating world to bring into the IT world that I'm already producing. I'm already building these things, but now there's this other component that is fascinating that I'm building in from the get-go. And like we discussed, ultimately it's making this product better for everyone that's using it.
That's awesome. What I love about that is we might have approached it if we were just tasked to do it ourselves, right? We may approach it in one sort of a one-sided way where we're addressing the technology part, but all of those things you don't necessarily think of, where it's real life situations and someone who may be coming into an office area and have a better experience using that technology. And that's awesome, because it's contributing to the whole experience about being here at Yale,
exactly
striving for excellence, right?
It makes that aspect of why someone would come to our office, talking specifically about those kiosks, it makes it like a non-issue,
right?
So that they can get to their study abroad advising appointment,
right?
And they don't have to worry about here's another system that I have to interact with in a suboptimal way.
Yes.
When you consider that stuff from the start, it just makes it a non-issue, and that's ultimately what you're striving to do is just make that entire user experience the best it can be for everyone.
For everyone, removing the obstacles, just like you said, removing obstacles for accessibility, removing obstacles for your employees,
for your staff,
for your staff,
totally.
how it makes it a better place to be, right?
Yep.
So Sam, I wish we could chat more.
This is great, Darice. Well,
so
cool. I
cool.
can't wait to interview you. It's going to be so fun.
Yeah, we have to set that up, But no, I mean, again, what I've always liked about you is the passion behind your work and how you approach your work. You really, it's contagious, first of all, but I've never seen Sam ever be like, oh, I don't really want to do this project. But you've always had that. Yeah, you've always had that passion and enthusiasm, energy behind everything that you do. And I think that that's one of the things that, when you have colleagues like that, like you, it makes Yale a better place to be. And I'm honestly saying that,
that's so kind. Thank you so much. Yeah, and right back at you.
Yeah.
I mean, you are one of those colleagues that is just a joy to work with.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's just such wonderful collaborations we've had over the years.
Yeah, absolutely. And I look forward to more. I mean, I think it's so important. There are so many things that you mentioned today that are so important to keep staff happy and keeping this the place it is so that they want to be here and they want to work here and they want to contribute to the greater good of Yale and all of these great things that we do, and removing obstacles for students so that they can move on and do greater things. And
absolutely. Yeah,
and I think it's so important, right? It's just been a pleasure to sit here with you and chat with you.
Great conversation. It really has.
I wish we had 2 hours, but
I mean, who doesn't love talking about themselves
I know.
for an hour and a half?
No, but it's awesome. And I think one of the things, or one of the goals for the podcast was really just to get to know people. We have a lot of new staff here at Yale College, and we don't see each other. We're all the way over at 55 Whitney.
It's true.
So we're not always kind of engrossed in the, campus community. And we have staff who work in the colleges, and we just don't get to meet each other or see each other.
Yeah.
So that's been my goal, is just to kind of highlight staff and, talk about all the people behind the scenes.
That's awesome.
And, we make this the wonderful place that it is. And
cool.
So thank you, Sam. I don't know if there's anything you want to end on, like pearls of wisdom or
pearls of wisdom. Oh my God, she put me on the spot. Well, here I'll say this.
Okay.
As a technologist, sometimes it's easy to get sort of lost in the actual physical technology itself, but I think it's super important for a technologist to remember that it's I'm pointing to my laptop right now. It's not about the thing. Yeah. It's about what you can do with the thing, right? It's about like what you can do with that technology. I mean, back to our bicycle thing, right? It's about the fact that like this technology has enabled me to get across town in a fraction of the time that it would otherwise.
Right.
And that's what's magical about technology. And when done right, technology is really invisible.
Yeah.
And when it's invisible, it becomes like magic. And I am so grateful to be in a place that lets me make that magic. For other people.
Oh, that's so awesome. I love that. Because when you think about it, it's like the bicycle takes you on other journeys, right? You take the bicycle across town and experience all these wonderful things, right? And
that's it.
Same thing, you use the technology and like you said, if you make it easy and less of an obstacle.
Right. Frictionless.
You move on and do greater things in life,
totally.
So Sam, thank you so much.
Darice.
This is awesome.
This has been so fun.
Yeah, I loved it. As you know, and there's my shameless plug, we're on Spotify, SoundCloud, and Apple Podcasts. So look out for Sam Cohen's episode.
Right.
And if you see Sam, don't forget to ask him for coffee. And
I'll put it on my P card.
Yeah. And again, thank you so much, Sam. It's really a pleasure getting to know you and working with you all these years. And just thank you for joining us today.
Likewise. Yeah, it's been so fun. Thanks, Darice.
Awesome. Take care. And we'll end here.